Sometimes the scariest things aren't what you see. They're what you hear. When Emma was 9 years old, her family moved into an old farmhouse on the outskirts of a small town. The house, built in the late 1800s, was charming, but creaked and groaned with the weight of its history. Emma loved her new home, especially the sprawling backyard and the creek that ran through it. But there was one place she avoided at all costs: the basement. The basement was dark, musty, and cluttered with generations of forgotten belongings. The single light bulb hanging from the ceiling barely illuminated the room, leaving shadows to loom in every corner. Her mother used it as storage, and her father joked that it was where monsters hid to scare little kids. Emma didn't laugh. One evening, while watching cartoons in the living room, Emma heard her mother calling her name. "Emma, come help me downstairs," the voice called. She glanced toward the kitchen where her mother was supposed to be making dinner, but the sound had come from the basement door. "Coming," Emma shouted back, though her stomach churned with unease. She hated going down there, but she didn't want to disobey. She opened the basement door, her hand trembling on the knob. The stairs groaned under her weight as she descended, the light switch clicking on but barely cutting through the darkness. "Mum!" she called out, peering into the cluttered space. There was no response. Her heart began to race. She stepped further into the basement, scanning the room for her mother, but the space was empty. "Mum!" she called again, louder this time. Then she heard it, a faint, muffled voice from the far corner of the basement. "Emma," it whispered, drawn out and eerie. She froze. The voice was unmistakably her mother's, but it sounded wrong, hollow, like it was coming from a great distance. She backed toward the stairs, her breath quickening. Just as she reached the bottom step, she heard footsteps, but not from the basement. They came from above her, in the kitchen. Then her mother's voice again, clear and cheerful. "Emma, dinner's ready." Her blood turned to ice. If her mother was upstairs, then who, or what, had called her down? Emma bolted up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind her. Her mother stood at the stove, humming to herself, entirely unaware of Emma's panic. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, turning to look at her pale-faced daughter. "You called me to the basement," Emma said, her voice trembling. Her mother frowned. "No, I didn't. I've been up here the whole time." Emma's father walked in, laughing. "You probably just imagined it. That old basement makes noises all the time." But Emma knew what she had heard. That night, she couldn't sleep. The memory of the voice echoed in her mind, each repetition making her more certain that it hadn't been her imagination. Around midnight, she heard a faint creak outside her bedroom door. She sat up, her heart pounding. "Emma," a voice whispered from the hallway. It was her mother's voice again, but softer, more insistent. She slid out of bed and tiptoed to the door, cracking it open just enough to peek into the hallway. It was empty. "Emma," the voice came again, now from downstairs. Fear gripped her, but curiosity won out. She crept down the stairs, her bare feet silent against the wooden steps. The voice led her to the basement door. She reached for the knob, hesitating for a moment before opening it. The darkness below seemed deeper than usual, as if the shadows were alive. "Emma," the voice called again, louder now. She flipped the light switch, but the bulb didn't turn on. Clutching the railing, she stepped down into the darkness. The air felt heavier, colder. The voice called her name once more, this time from the very back of the basement. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Something moved in the shadows. A figure stepped forward, just enough for her to see its outline. It was tall and thin, with impossibly long arms. Its face was obscured, but it tilted its head as if studying her. "Emma!" it said again, the voice now distorted, a mockery of her mother's tone. She screamed and scrambled back up the stairs, slamming the door shut and locking it. Her parents rushed out of their bedroom, alarmed by her cries. Through sobs, she told them what she had seen. Her father checked the basement but found nothing. "There's nothing down there," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "It's just your imagination." But Emma knew it wasn't. The thing in the basement was real, and it was watching her. Over the next few weeks, Emma avoided the basement entirely, but the voice didn't stop. It called to her at odd hours, sometimes from the basement, sometimes from outside her window. Her parents dismissed it as nightmares, but Emma knew better. One night, the voice grew bolder. As Emma lay in bed, she heard it again, but this time it wasn't calling her name. It was speaking to someone else. "She's scared. She knows we're here," it whispered. Emma's blood ran cold. Who was it talking to? Summoning her courage, she grabbed a flashlight and crept downstairs. The house was silent, but she felt the presence of something waiting. She opened the basement door, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air was thick, oppressive. Then she saw it. The figure was standing in the center of the room, but it wasn't alone. Dozens of smaller shapes writhed in the shadows, their movements jerky and unnatural. The tall figure turned to face her, its eyeless gaze locking onto hers. "Emma," it said, stepping closer. "You shouldn't have come." She screamed and fled up the stairs, slamming the door behind her. But this time the door didn't hold. It burst open, and the shadows spilled into the house. Her parents woke to chaos, the walls shaking as if the house itself were alive. The figures surrounded them, their distorted voices filling the air. Just as Emma thought it was over, the first rays of dawn broke through the windows. The figures recoiled, hissing as the light touched them. Within moments they were gone, leaving the house in silence. The family moved out the next day, leaving the farmhouse and its horrors behind. Years later, Emma still hears the voice in her dreams, calling her back to the basement. She never answers. What would you have done if you were Emma? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay safe and remember, not every voice deserves an answer.